welcome back to my channel, What Colorful Worlds. In today's video, I'm going to be doing a Q&A where I answer some of the questions you have given me in celebration of my 3,000 subscribers. So thank you everyone who has subscribed to this channel and those who watch it regularly. It really does mean the world to me to have your support in this endeavor because it's so motivational to be able to know that community is being formed around all this effort I'm putting into my channel. It's also, by the way, a celebration of my 10 years of adult coloring. That's right, 10 years ago I started coloring, and I'm going to explain to you that story in just a moment. So the way in which this is going to work is I'm going to be coloring in this page by Kirby Rosanis in Worlds Within Worlds. I've already gotten started on the page. I've done the background using some of my off-brand ink pads like Distressed Inks and a stencil, and I'm going to be coloring in the central image using some of my polychromos because I have a small 36 set of polychromos that I don't give enough love to, so I'm trying to use them a tiny bit more here. And so it'll be a tiny bit like a chatty color along, if you will. So let's get started. Alright, so the first question that I was asked is who or what got me into adult coloring? So I started coloring as soon as I graduated from college and joined the workforce, and I moved into a shared housing unit with some of my friends from college. One of them was a bit more artistic than the rest of us, and she suggested that we get into adult coloring as a way of kind of relaxing at the end of a long workday. This is also when I think adult coloring started to become a bit more popular. It's around the time in which Johanna Basford especially started to make the splash in the coloring world and switch it towards a bit more of an adult coloring than like a kids coloring community. So each of us got different books. I can't remember what Claire got, but Natalie got Secret Garden and then I got Enchanted Forest. And so then we would just sit around and color in those in the evenings as a nice way of relaxing. Eventually we got some of our other university friends into it, and then we would have regular cozy art nights, especially like on a Friday night, because none of us were very big partiers. we were more of like the cozy nerd crowd back in the day, and so that's how we would just kind of like relax on a weekend evening. And not everyone would bring coloring. Sometimes people would bring other artworks. Claire, the artistic one, eventually switched towards just doing her own paintings. And so it still ended up just being like a nice sweet little community as we navigated the early stages of entering since in some ways becoming real adults, because in university you're still very dependent and still very much a kid in some ways, since you're concentrating so much on your studies. And so with that, I think my first set of pencils were probably from Michael's. That's a art store in America, and they weren't very good. And my original colorings, of course, were not very good because I had no idea what I was doing. I didn't really take any art classes outside of high school, so not really, I guess, didn't really have too much of a skill set to rely on. But I eventually upgraded to the 72 set of Prismacolor pencils, and I think I got like a mandala coloring book and then another just a random Michael's store-bought coloring book to supplement the collection that I already had. Alright, so next is what do you enjoy the most about the coloring community? Well, I think it's in the name, community. It really is a space that is so precious and that is very cozy, and I noticed that people in the coloring community always are uplifting. They never really have a mean thing to say, and it's really concentrating on, I think, celebrating whatever progress that you make or whatever it is that you create without judging it, and I really appreciate that, especially I think for beginners in the coloring community where it can just feel so intimidating, I think, to enter this new space. And so yeah, just how people make sure that it's a safe place for people to be creative, I think is so rare to find, especially when you consider that so much of the community space is digital. It's I think very hard to find an uplifting, like, sweet digital community, but the coloring community just does that. And so I think I think that's my favorite part of the coloring community is just a very authentic community feel to it too. And then that kind of leads into another question that I was asked, is what inspires me the most to my coloring. And so yeah, I would say just other colorists, not only in terms of the community aspect of it, but just seeing what other people color is very inspiring. So I have like a Pinterest page filled with what other people have done just for inspiration. And it also, I think, can inspire you to push your own boundaries. So for example, just seeing the way in which people have such cool backgrounds in Hannah Carlson's work, especially using wet medium, is what promoted me to first start using wet medium in coloring books. And I wouldn't have done that if I didn't have those images posted by other colorists. So it's a community that I think inspires so much of the community. All right, so next question is, what's your favorite #1 artist, book, or coloring pencil? What's your capsule collection for coloring away from home? And if you could pick one coloring book to color over and over again, which would it be and why? As well as what's applying medium, what would it be and why? So if you know me, you know this is you know the answer is going to be it's of course Kirby Rosanis, and it is very specifically Worlds Within Worlds. I think my favorite coloring book I've ever colored in. Just the images are incredible. They're really cool and quirky, and it's also just so easy to color in because it's a full page spread for the most part, or if it's not, it takes up enough of the page that you can quickly add in a background without feeling overwhelmed by adding in a background. And so being able to have a page where I don't have white in the background, where everything is all colored in like corner to corner, is something that I appreciate about Kirby's work. As well as it's, you know, it has a lot of details, but they kind of like let you know where to add in the shadows because of the line work. So it's also, I think, in many ways, I would say that these are more beginner friendly than Johanna Basword for those two reasons. So yeah, so Kirby Rosanis would be the book that I would color in over and over again, and it would be in my capsule collection, and it's my favorite book. And so yeah, it'll be a very sad day when I finish this book, and that's coming around the corner now. I have only 19 pages left. And then in terms of my favorite supply, probably the ones that I use the most are my Prismacolor pencils, and I would have to throw in a white acrylic paint pen because being able to have those highlights are so important, I think, in any work. So Prismas, the full 150 set, a good sharpener, which you need for the Prismas, otherwise they won't work, and a white paint pen would be the three things in my arsenal, along with this book. Alright, the next set of questions have to do with coloring techniques and technicals. So the first one is, what's my go-to medium for backgrounds, and also what medium intimidates me the most? So I would say for backgrounds, I don't know, I think it depends on like what I'm doing. Recently I've gotten into using oil pastels for backgrounds, and I think that that works well because you can just get such a vibrant spread for very little effort, and they blend fairly well with each other as well. So it's a fantastic medium just to have like a quick, very vibrant background. I would say oil pastels are the way to go for that. Otherwise, if you wanted something that's just a bit softer, like regular chalk pastels are a good option for backgrounds. Although I would say using chalk pastels straight is still going to be very transparent. And so a good option would be to first lay down some kind of wet medium, whether that's watercolor paint, like watercolor pencils that you activate, even Inktense that you activate, and on top of that then use the chalk pastels. That's another really good way of doing backgrounds. I guess in this one here, I've been using my off-brand distressed inks as well as some stencils, so those are good options too. Eventually I'm interested in buying some higher quality ink pads. Mine are currently like running out, and so they're a bit rough to work with for that reason. And I'm just curious like what the hype is with the distressed inks or the distressed oxides from the Tim Holtz Ranger collection, but those are also so expensive. Like if you're spending like €6 per pack and you will need like multiple colors, that's just a lot of money you're spending for very little range of product, right? And I know they sell them in some sets and stuff too, but I don't know, like it's for some reason that to me is just a bit of a harder sell than some of the other mediums. But yeah, those could be good background mediums as well. In terms of mediums that intimidate me the most, I would say probably using more white medium like gouache. It's been on my mind to try, but I've never been brave enough to try. My friend Sabina on Instagram, who goes by Sabi Sabi, she does like phenomenal work with gouache, both for the backgrounds and the foregrounds, and she uses that cheap Himi gouache set. And for me, like, I own good gouache. I was into gouache painting for a while, but I never really ventured to trying it into coloring books except for like a solid layer for the background. But I'm interested in, I guess, if I ever get over my intimidation factor, I think it could be really cool to just bring in more of those wet mediums, or even like color main elements with watercolor paints, not just some of the background. Because I think some of the most phenomenal work you can see online has to do with artists using artist grade wet medium in the coloring books to make them pop. All right, how do I decide on a color palette is kind of the next question on this list here. So I think it really just kind of depends on what I'm doing. So for example, with this page that I'm currently working on, I would say that because it's like a pyramid in a desert scene, everything is automatically in my mind going towards these earth tones. And I did see online someone do something very similar to this, where they used a hieroglyphics stencil. And so then I thought of doing that too. And then I guess I do really appreciate monochromatic pieces, or pieces with a bit more of a limited color palette. So since this is all stone, and since there's a lot of yellows and warm ochres, rather than doing it with like a cold granite stone, to instead do it with this like warmer yellow sandstone, just seems to fit. Other times I will use Sarah Renee Clark's color cubes as a basis for my inspiration. You can see that in the last video I posted from Magical Worlds, where I was inspired by a color card, and even though I deviated from it, it was kind of like the basis of how I got started coloring in it. Other times I sometimes will look at an image and have like an idea of my head of exactly what I want to do there, and for one of the elements, and so then I base everything else around that one element as well. So I guess it varies, but yeah, coming in with an idea ahead of time for the colors that you want, I think is really important for cohesion, because when you're coloring, one of the things you have to kind of keep in mind is balance. And so balance comes with having balanced colors that work with each other. I don't really do the thing of complementary colors or color wheels or things like that. It's just not something I've been interested in. But yeah, just seeing, I guess, color palettes, or sometimes I can be inspired by a color palette online. Those are more authentically how I would end up choosing a palette. All right, and the next question is, what technique has been your favorite that you've learned since joining the coloring community? I'm not sure if favorite is the right word for this, but learning how to burnish has been a game changer for me. So this was back when I was living in Sri Lanka, starting in 2019. And so I think it was 2020 maybe when I finally learned how to burnish. Like, I've been coloring for 5 years, and in those first 5 years I did not know how to burnish. But it was watching a Sarah Renee Clark how to color gold video, and then practicing it a tiny bit, and then seeing how absolutely long it takes to color, because earlier I would just color really rapidly, you know, and then I'd wonder why I was streaky. and then B, understanding a bit more about layers, and then C, learning about like actually what is burnishing and how do you get to a good burnished effect was just such a game changer, because suddenly what I realized I had to practice was actually my stamina, because like, you know, I coloring can be a bit boring sometimes, like if like that's why we watch YouTube or other videos or audiobook while we color, because it can be a bit draining. And so like I kind of accepting that, and then accepting that I'm gonna have to go more slowly than I'm actually going, and put in a bit more effort into the final like end product, and not rushing it so much, was I think just like such a game changer in terms of the most valuable technique I've ever learned when it comes to coloring, because yeah, it just made such a big difference in the quality of my overall pieces. And so yeah, that's the key one I would say has been like the most important that I've learned. Yeah. All right, next question is, how do I pick my pages to color? Well, for that, at the moment, I am pretty limited in the pages I'm allowing myself to color, just because I have so many projects that are happening. So I want to finish Worlds Within Worlds. So a lot of the pages I'll pick have to do with finding a page I have not yet colored in that book. I'm trying to do a full book color along with Magical Worlds by Johanna Basford, so that's also on my to color list. I also am in a witches buddy color group where every month we pick a different witches page, so that book's always on my list. And then I have 3 Instagram challenges. One of them is Amanda Clark's The Coloring Planner, so every month picking a page from that. And then Jodie Colors has her fairy tales, and so whatever fairy tale inspired prompt, I'll do that. And then finally, Finding Joy in Color has the Wild Year of Color, so the animals, and so I follow that. So if you combine all of those goals together, I'm then very limited, because those are the pages I have to pick. But then within that, sometimes I'll pick pages depending on other things, such as if I'm doing a buddy with someone, then I'll pick that page from a different book, or if for example, I'm running the Facebook page, the fantasy theme of Kirby Rasanis, and the scavenger hunt theme that Jane set is this page, which is why I'm working on this Sphinx page here. And so those are also part of the logical reasonings, I would say. And then I guess like finally it would be just if there's a theme for the month. So for example, when Space Timber came around that Soraya organized, pretty much every page I picked were space themed. And then you have, I guess this month is Halloween, so aside from this page, pretty much all other pages will be Halloween themed, Christmas, fall, spring, summer, you get the point. Just following themes helps me pick pages too. All right, and then how many books do you have in total? Ooh, I gotta go count. Do you have any that you're looking to add to your collection, and have you ever completed a book? So no, I have not completed a book, but I am in the process of completing Worlds Within Worlds. And eventually I'll complete, I think, Romantic, oh yeah, I forgot to add, Romantic Country the Second Tale. I'm in a buddy group where we do front to back, so every month I do a Romantic Country page too. Yeah, I'm very limited in the pages I can pick. But sorry, have I ever completed a book? No. I will complete Worlds Within Worlds. I will complete Magical Worlds. I will complete Romantic Country the Second's Tale, and I'm getting not that far from completing Teresa Goodridge's Country Charm as well. So those are the 4 books that I think will be the first ones to be complete in my collection. And then in terms of how many books do I have? All right, let's count. All right, I'm back. So by my counts, I have 33 books in my collection, but that's also not really counting books such as the Harry Potter Color With Me, or the Draw Your Journal or Create This Book, or the 365 Days of Creativity. So if you add those ones in, yeah, it's anywhere between 33 to just under 40 books, if you include the project books as well. All right, so then Yep. Are you looking to add any books to my collection? So what's on my coloring wish list? What do I want to add? I would say on my coloring wish list, I mean, of course, any of the cool books that you see people post online, on Instagram, on YouTube are automatically in some ways in a coloring wish list. But if I were to categorize like the top pages, I would like Guliana's Sanctuary for Monsters. I think that's a really cute storybook. Hidden Creatures coloring book seems to be a really nice palette cleanser book, so I wouldn't mind owning that. Worlds of Wonders, I think, would be a really good Johanna Basford book once I finish Magical Worlds. Mythomorphia, I have a feeling, will be my second favorite Kirby book after Worlds Within Worlds, because every time I see a page online, I'm like, yes, that looks amazing. So I think, yeah, I think I might get that book as my reward when I finish Worlds Within Worlds. And then I would say I don't own any of the Mythographia series, but if I did, I would go for Dragon Spell, because those seems to have some really beautiful illustrations, and they're dragons. Like, I don't own a dragon coloring book, and that would be really cool. And then maybe if I were to pick a Lulu Mayo, I would do the Mermaid book by Lulu Mayo, and then see if I can do a challenge where I color every single page in May. But I don't know, me and my challenges, I have grand ideas and very little execution sometimes. And then I guess like Lila Dooley, the Flowers book, could be a nice flower book, because I think they're just larger flowers than the Johanna flower book. So it could be nice to have another floral book in my collection where I don't have to like cry over how many minute details there are. Otherwise, like, I don't know, I think I would like to eventually own all of Kirby Rasanis's work except for the collections. I'm not interested in owning a coloring book I don't feel like coloring in, and I do not want to repeat coloring, so I would not color in his compilation collection books. I would only color in the originals. So I would like to own eventually all of the originals, because yeah, I feel like he's an artist that I can't get bored of. I have a Kirby bug, I guess. And then otherwise, maybe once I start getting a bit more into Hannah Carlson, I wouldn't mind owning a few more Hannah Carlson. But then again, it's like I mean, I guess the Forest Kingdom and the Witch's Cottage would be the two I would try to go for. But then again, it's like, you know, if I'm currently not coloring in Hannah Carlson, I don't think I should buy a Hannah Carlson. And I don't think I'm going to be adding too many new books to my collection. I do have one on the way, which I'll show you next week, but for the most part, I don't want to keep adding to my collection if I'm not going to work in the collection. And so I have so many books on my shelf that I'm not touching, because I'm so dedicated towards these project books that I have going on. So until I finish Worlds Within Worlds, until I am further along in Magical Worlds, and until I'm done with the year, so then I can finish the Coloring Planner project, the Color the Fairy Tales project, and the Wild Year of Color project, then only then can I be free, I think, to buy a new book, because I would essentially not be beholden to a smaller set of books to finish, if that makes sense. So, I mean, I'm happy I'm doing all these projects, but yeah, they help me pick. They're also very limiting, is what I would say. All right. And then in terms of other questions, what are my top 10 pages that I have ever done? So I would say trying to pick from a variety of different colorists that I have. I would say in Worlds Within Worlds, it would be the Rampage, not the Rampage, sorry, Rampage, English teacher. All right, it would be the Rampage, because that's, I think, a huge breakthrough I had with using oil pastels, and just lighting and the action of it and the color choice of it was just spot on. So I think that's my favorite from Worlds Within Worlds. And then if I switch to Mythic World, the Sphinx page in Mythic Worlds that I recently did using my Albert Durers was also amazing, and just being able to have that much vibrancy with a watercolor pencil is pretty cool. I did use the oil pastels for the sky, but aside from that, everything else is oh, and I guess Prisma's for the silvery detailing. But aside from those, everything else, like the ground and the rest of the Sphinx and the wings and everything, were my Albert Dürer pencils. Switching to, I guess, Johanna Basford next. From Enchanted Forest, it's this redo, this like fixing a ruined page of this lion, and I did so using acrylic paint, and it's yeah, one of my favorite pages I've ever done, I think, and it just works so well in context. And it's just so vibrant with that like that red contrasting to the black background. In Magical Worlds, I would say it's the I guess the vignettes page, which have like this really cool color combos. And so my challenge for myself for that page is, could I use the exact same pencils on all of these disparate elements? And then what that did is it forced me to create colors. And plus I think it's one of the original pages that got my Magical Worlds color, like full book color along idea to work, and people seem to respond to it pretty well. So yeah, so I would say that is one of my favorite pages as well. And then finally, I would say if I go down to like Rita Berman, the Africa page where you have these 3 banners together, and that's all with my small 36 set of polys. Just was amazing, also because I used polychromos and I normally don't use polys, and so it's just a way of kind of like better understanding how these pencils work. Plus the colors together were just perfect for the page. Like, I'm so happy with the vibrancy, and I think that it's a vibrancy you really can't achieve with Prismas. And that's one thing I realized about polys is like once you build up the layers, they are way more vibrant and rich and pigmented than Prismas are. And that's because they lack the wax bloom, which adds a bit of like a sheen that that dulls the colors a bit. So they don't have a wax bloom, so they don't have that dulling of the colors. So then, question 15, what do you find most challenging about coloring? I guess feeling brave enough to experiment is probably one of the things I find the most challenging with coloring. And so like a part of that is with portraits, for example. Like, I don't currently feel good enough at portraits, and therefore I don't feel inclined to choose them. And so then I'm not, I guess, brave enough to just embrace that the first few will be a bit meh in order to learn how to do them better. So I think that's what I find challenging about coloring, is that sometimes it's easy to just fall into what you know you're good at and then not challenge yourself to improve. Other times I think it's, and I've mentioned this a few times, coloring is just so addictive that I don't feel like branching out to other things, even though sometimes I get the itch to branch out into other things, namely how to draw. And so I still am so like hesitant to even start drawing, and that's in part because I'm so addicted to coloring that I can't stop and pick up a pencil to draw instead. Like, it's so much harder. And so that's not like a bad thing, right? I'm still getting my creativity on, and I'm still learning and growing in this particular art style, but it does mean, yeah, I'm not, I need to learn how to get past that so that I can develop more skills with drawing. Yeah, that's another challenge I have with coloring. And then in terms of what's my favorite technique to share or teach with others, I would say this is less of a technique and more of a like a life lesson. I would say it is learning to just try to not be so scared of failing. And I know this is contradictory because it came just after I said my challenge is fear of failure, but I would say I try to send the message of trying not to be so scared of failing and to kind of embrace like, I don't know, the creative process a bit more, or to kind of like let your page turn into what it wants to turn into and not what you think it should turn into. Because I think we can all hear that advice. Even myself, we can all hear that advice, for sure. And so in terms of technique otherwise, I would say, I'm trying to think in terms of my color alongs. What do I do? I don't know, maybe if you follow my color alongs, more religiously, you'll be able to answer this question. I don't know. You tell me. If you watch my tutorials, you tell me. I can't answer that question. I genuinely just don't know. Alright, so what's the theme that I like most to color? So this comes from Soraya. Soraya, if you're watching, I think you know the answer. I love Space Timber, and I think that you do such a wonderful job of not only creating it and organizing it, but turning it into a community. So thank you, Soraya, if you're watching this far into the video. Yeah, Space Timber is a great theme month. Galaxies are very fun. It's a nice way of bringing out any wet media that you have. And then in terms of the final 2 questions for this one here, I'm leaving these for last because they're a bit more personal. The first one is, I think, from Lauren Colors, and it goes, why did I start a YouTube channel? So, good question. Why did I start a YouTube channel? I guess I felt like I had something to offer the community, because as I started to get more into YouTube and started watching channels, and I was starting to color a bit more, I guess I started to feel like I was getting good enough at coloring with all the practice that I had something to share. And that was, I think, my first motivation, is this desire to contribute to this wonderful community and share with the community. And it's definitely had ups and downs. Like when I first started it and I had like, I don't know, 70 subscribers, and then it wasn't growing, and then I kind of gave up on it. And then I realized that, I can't, of course it's not going to be successful if I give up on it, and it's just a matter of like trying, and there's a lot of trial and error, like learning how to edit a video. Like, I'm not technologically inclined. Learning how to set up a filming setup, learning, to invest the money that it takes to invest in things such as like tripods and ring lights, and even like having my own coloring space, because I used to share this desk with my partner while he worked full-time on his job. So he would like sit there and I would sit here, and you can barely color or work that way, let alone try to film that way without the noise interference of a person literally right next to you. Yeah, so those were, I think, some of the challenges when I first started it. Motivation, I think, was the biggest one. And then also, I think comparison started to creep in, where I'd be comparing like my success to the success of other YouTubers, and then I'd feel worse. And then learning that I really had to get over that. And that was a really good life lesson, I think. Just really getting over that, because it was just so unhelpful of a feeling, and I was more negative, and therefore not part of what I wanted in the coloring sphere. So then just learning to, I guess, fix my attitude, learning to fix my expectations, learning to just do it for the right reasons, I think were the first biggest hurdles I had to overcome in starting the channel. And then why did I continue with the channel despite those hurdles? I think it's, when I have community members comment, it's so motivating, because then you kind of feel like the whole purpose for doing it is paying off, because it is forming that community, and if people are able to take something from it, like maybe they learned something or were inspired, then that's highly motivating to continue as well, because then you feel like you're kind of making a bit more of an impact. For sure, it is a big part of it. And then I guess, I don't know, lastly, I would say in the process of forming the channel was also kind of like trying to decide who I was as a channel, right? Am I someone who does art entertainment, in which case I do kind of like shorter 20-minute videos and they're mostly like fun and well edited, or am I an art educator, in which case I do longer full color alongs? Will it even work if I do both? What's kind of like your thumbnail style, because people would recognize you based on your thumbnails, or like what's your thing that makes people be like, yes, I want to go there because they have the thing. Like, I'm still trying to figure out my thing, but I know that when I was starting the YouTube channel, I spent a lot of time thinking about what my thing was. And for example, like Erica, she does her weekend whips, and she has the same thumbnail for each of them, and there are these videos where she just talks, and she talks about her life, and it's soothing and it's entertaining. And Color with Claire, she does, you know, all of the product reviews, but I do not want to clutter my house with stuff. It's, yeah, I'm a minimalist, not a maximalist. And so I also don't want to buy things and then like rave about them just for the sake of a video. It feels inauthentic to me. And I'm sorry, I'm not saying that Color with Claire is inauthentic. She's so authentic. She's a wonderful person, a wonderful colorist, and it's just, I absolutely love everything she does. And I think that for her, all the product reviews work because like she genuinely tries them out. Like every time she does a coloring book, she colors in a page to talk to you about it. And so for her, it's authentic. For me, it would not be authentic because that's just not who I am as a person or a colorist, is what I'm trying to say, if that's clear. So then I guess, yeah, so what is my why? What is my what is my thing? I'm still figuring that out. But I think what I realized is it's fine not to actually fully know, because if you decide too quickly, like how can you know? I don't know. Yeah, don't get caught. Don't get a, what's the expression? Don't sweat the small stuff. All right, and then the final question that I have is coming from Chrissy Wilcox, and it is about me being an American who does not live in America. And so the question is, would I ever move back to the States? Or would I move to another location if the opportunity presented itself? What is something that you learned about yourself that is most surprising through this journey? And finally, do my students know that I have a YouTube channel and that I color? All right, so I guess let's start with the last one because that's the easiest to answer. My students, for the most part, do not know that I have a YouTube channel. I have occasionally shown a very select few some of my Instagram pages, but I'm slightly terrified of like showing them my YouTube channel, in part because it's like, I don't know, I do like to keep the boundaries between my personal and my professional life a bit more strict, because you know, you are dealing with minors, and I don't want any crossover in any way, shape, or form that could be inappropriate. And not that it would be inappropriate for them to see my art channel. It's just, I think, I don't know, I'm slightly scared of being cyber-stalked by a few of them. And I guess I'm shy. I don't know. So yeah, I don't really tell my students or show this part of my life to them. And I know it would be okay if I did. I just don't feel comfortable yet, if ever. I don't know, I'm a private person when it comes to my schoolwork and my kids, yeah. And then in terms of would I ever move back to the States? At this point, I would say probably not. My fiance, I'm engaged, is not American, and he's Belgian. And so part of us moving here, I think, is settling in with his people, right? Like his friends, his family, his community. And so after 4 years of being here, I finally feel like it's my community too. And part of that is also because, like, even though I'm American, I've only lived in the United States for 8 years. I was born and raised abroad. And so my connection to the United States was once every 3 years as a kid going to visit my grandma. Yeah, it's a bit of a contradiction, but I feel the most at home in a place that is not home because I never really had a singular home, if that makes sense. Thank you all so much for watching this video. I hope it was helpful for you or entertaining for you. It was an interesting process for me to film the Q&A. So thank you also very much for the questions that you asked as you joined me on this color along. And I hope to see you around. Have a wonderful day. Happy coloring. Bye everyone.